So, I've recently made the decision that I kind of want to give YouTube a shot and reboot my channel. In the future, I'd love to make sewing tutorials, fan art, and even some original character stuff here and there. I've noticed there's a lack of tutorials specifically for advanced plush making. I feel like I have the skill sets and the tools to show other people kind of how I do my craft and how plushies are made. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Soft Soap Factory, and I've been sewing plushies since 2011. After leaving my scam college in 2020 for reasons, I had a lot more time on my hands, and I was actually able to take plush making a lot more serious. This was basically the first time in my life I didn't have school, and I was actually able to pursue something I love, and about a year after that is when I got my embroidery machine in 2021, and the difference was enormous. It took my plushies from, I would say, average to basically professional overnight just with one tool. It definitely took some time for me to kind of grasp how an embroidery machine works and how the software works, but going back to wanting to make tutorials, there's basically nothing out there on how to do this stuff, and I'm to the point where I think I know enough that I'm willing to share kind of how I do certain things and give that joy to other people, have other artists create. Maybe this is something you'll like too, and I'm just here to help. A bit of a disclaimer with this, I'm completely self-taught with my methods, and I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to plush making or embroidery. I'm just here to share the techniques I've developed. With any art form, just do whatever works best for you. This is just the foundations to build on top of. If it helps, perfect, great, follow these techniques. If not, hopefully you can glean some sort of information and spin it your own way to make it work for you. I'm just here to kind of give a stepping stone into the world of advanced plush making. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, but hopefully it can help. I'll also try to figure out how to add timestamps just so it's easier to navigate this information. With all that out of the way, I think we're finally ready to dive into this thing. So you want to do embroidery. That is a fantastic choice. Great job. Perhaps there's someone who already does plushies and you want to take it up a notch with embroidery, or maybe you don't make plushies at all and you just are curious about embroidery. Regardless, I think these videos can be pretty useful in just understanding the basics of embroidery and what kind of tools you need to get started. Without a doubt, the most important item on this list is gonna be an embroidery machine. With so many brands and styles, it's definitely a little overwhelming to even know where to begin. I would recommend considering what exactly it is you plan on making. If you are doing plushies and all you want is just embroidered eyes, you can probably settle on a smaller machine. But if you want to do more advanced and complex plushies, you're definitely going to want something a little bigger. The most important feature you're going to want your machine to have is a USB port. So not all machines have this, but the ones that do, you can actually upload your custom files. And for our purposes today, this is a must-have requirement. Unless your machine is like Bluetooth or something. I don't know if that exists. When I was first looking for an embroidery machine, my biggest priorities were the USB port and a large embroidery space. After doing some research online, I did find a model I was pretty interested in, and I was actually fortunate enough to visit a local sewing and vacuum store and actually test out the machine in person. I highly recommend this if you are able to do that. It definitely helped alleviate some of the stress I felt and just uncertainty with a brand new expensive machine. It was really nice to have the employee kind of show me how to thread it, how to turn it on, just really basic stuff. The machine I tested and ultimately ended up buying was the Burnett B70 Deco. It had everything I wanted. It had the USB port, 3 different hoop sizes, a bonus touchscreen. It was also within my budget, being around $1,700 US. This is the most expensive thing on the list, but I think it's the most important. Technically, a sewing machine is optional since a lot of people do hand sew plushies, but in my experience, it's not very practical to do a whole plushie like this, for example, completely out of hand sewing. A machine will definitely make it go a lot faster, it'll be stronger, and it just makes it a lot easier if you're trying to make plushies. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore hand sewing, and a lot of my favorite artists actually do completely hand sewn plushies. I think at that point it's more of an aesthetic choice. I do hand sew parts and pieces, but to do like main body parts and stuff, that sounds terrible, oh my god. To hand sew a complete character and just flip it inside out, I feel kind of defeats the purpose of hand sewing, because at that point you don't even see it and you spent all that time hand sewing something. I hope I explained this part okay. Hand sewing is definitely great and I highly recommend you know how to do it regardless if you have a machine or not. Having a machine just makes it easier in the long run to make plushies. So I just wanted to clarify that hand sewing definitely works. It just kind of becomes a chore to do all that hand sewing just to flip something inside out when a sewing machine is a much faster alternative. I strongly recommend a sewing machine. To get started, you don't even need a crazy sewing machine. Most beginner machines will probably be like $100 maybe. I used one of those for probably the first 3 or 4 years of making plushies, and I believe in 2016 I upgraded to a Singer heavy duty machine. Pretty sure I got it on sale for like $150. It was definitely worth the upgrade. Just anything to get started, doesn't have to be crazy. Just use whatever grandma has, it doesn't matter. The next machine I'd like to talk about is a scanner. This one is 100% optional and is kind of preference based. After I got my scanner, I find it hard to go back without one. There's a couple loopholes I discovered before investing in a scanner, but those methods were never 100% accurate for my needs. The scanner just makes life so much easier and takes out a lot of headache. Okay, but why do I even need a scanner for making stuffed animals? As my plush skills advanced, I noticed a lot of characters I was making have a lot of designs that kind of cross over seams and have to match up with other pattern pieces. Making a physical test plush takes out any guesswork you might have to do with where things might line up and how they'll look. And then the scanner allows you to essentially scan those pieces perfectly flat, and then you can trace them in the embroidery software and have a perfect one-to-one model of whatever finished plush you want to make. This part of the process is a little difficult to explain without going into a whole nother video, which I do plan on making in the future, so stay tuned for that. But like I said, having a scanner is totally optional. I don't even use it for every character I make, it's just ones with really complex designs. The scanner I use for my plushies is an Epson Perfection V600. It's been great for all my needs. I believe it was about $350 when I bought it, and it also includes a software download, so I didn't have to buy a separate software to run it, which is very nice. I love having a scanner, and if plush making and embroidery is something you'd like to pursue in the future, it's probably the last thing you can invest in since it's not 100% required. Another machine I like to use that isn't required is a Cricut cutter. I use my Cricut maker to cut out my test plush patterns. On average, I think it saves me about 2 hours every time I have to make a test plush, because I don't have to go through and hand cut each piece. I can just have the Cricut do all the work for me. The Cricut also works if you're making a character that has a lot of solid colors and a lot of pieces don't have embroidery. I use a Cricut Maker 3 and they sell for $430. Similar to the scanner, it also came with a digital download for a design software. I kind of use this software. It's mostly a means to actually get the Cricut to run. I do all my design stuff on Adobe Illustrator. If you're interested in getting a Cricut to help cut down on the time it takes to make a plush, make sure you get a model that can actually cut fabric. It should specify which models can and can't. Just make sure you look at them pretty closely. Remember when I said that the embroidery machine was going to be the most expensive item? Well, That was a lie. The last tool on my list is absolutely required, and this is going to be some sort of laptop or computer that's capable of running your design softwares. To my knowledge, I think the softwares I run should work on both Mac and Windows computers, so as long as you have one of these, you should be good to follow along with my videos. I simply just use my 2019 MacBook Pro. I got this laptop back when I was a student in college, and it served me well. It runs everything fine. Just know that you will need some sort of laptop if you're gonna follow along and learn how to make embroidery files. To kind of wrap things up, I have one more category for the hardware section. At least I think these count as hardware since they are physical tools I use pretty regularly. The most important one is going to be a USB flash drive. Now, the flash drive is how you're going to transfer files from your computer to your physical embroidery machine. You don't really need anything too crazy or advanced for this. I just found one laying around in a drawer that I used in high school, I think. It's a 32GB SanDisk flash drive. It's extremely basic. They're like $7 online. It has plenty of space, and I haven't had any issues of running out of space. Normally, I will cycle through my files and kind of delete old ones as I go, so this one should definitely last me a while. Another tool that's mandatory to me, but maybe not everyone, is I have to use a USB-C to USB adapter for my computer. Apple doesn't have USB ports on their latest computers, so using an adapter is the only way I can really still use my USB stick and be able to do my embroidery files. It's not really that big of a deal, but it's a minor annoyance, and if it goes missing, it's not a fun time. The last accessory I can think of is a computer mouse. I personally like to use a computer mouse when I'm editing my files. I just find it easier to have something that has like a right click, and I feel like I have more motion with a mouse compared to a laptop trackpad. It's completely personal preference. I just wanted to mention it and let everyone know this is also an option if the computer pad is uncomfortable to use. Whew, wow, okay, so that's a lot of information to kind of take in, and if you made it to this point in the video, I applaud you for sticking around and listening to me ramble about machines for, what, like 20 minutes now? I'd like to kind of summarize what we went over. So for mandatory items, if you want to do plush making like mine, I recommend an embroidery machine, a computer, and a USB flash drive. None of my videos are gonna really make sense without these three tools. Items that I consider more optional are gonna be the sewing machine, I guess, scanner, Cricut cutter, USB adapter, and the computer mouse. I understand that a lot of these tools are pretty expensive, and believe me when I say I did not get them all overnight. I've been sewing for over 10 years now, and it's taken me that long to have the time and money to really invest in this hobby. So please don't feel discouraged if you don't have every single item on this list. Going back to the beginning, this is just what I use, and these are my recommendations. In part 2, we'll go over the softwares and supplies I use for plush making, since this video is already way longer than I expected. Before I go, I have a couple shoutouts to make. The first one goes to Kodiak the Goat for helping me make this dope music. I'm looking forward to doing more with you in the future, and I'm excited to collaborate. The second shoutout goes to my oldest friend, Static Paws on Instagram. Thank you so much for doing my wonderful character art. I've always been a big fan of your art style, and I'm so proud to represent it for you. The two of you kind of gave me that final push I needed to start YouTube, so thank you so much, and we'll see where this goes. I'm so tired after editing this video, like, man, oh my god. Blah 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 blah. Did you guys think I would go the whole video without playing this classic Wii Sports tune?
Somebody